Hello, fellow dolly enthusiast. So it's a new year, a new start, a new opportunity, new so yada yada yada. But most importantly, it's that time again. It's the dolls. The demands. An outfit. So to kick off the new year, I'd like to invite you to help me make a new outfit for one of my boys. It's supposed to be slick, kinda streamlined, and maybe futuristic. So let's get cracking. Okay, so to begin with, let's make this guy a little bit more modest for YouTube. There you go. Okay, so we're going to be utilizing a duct tape pattern yet again, because I'm no draftsman. And I like the pant leg to look a bit more bulky and not so tight. So to do that, we're just going to wrap him up with a little bit of napkin, and then to protect him from all the tape we're about to use, a layer of saran wrap. This could be as tight as you want, since it shouldn't be too difficult to take off like the next layer will. I like to make sure to get up inside the wells of the joints so that it holds better. And anything that I have a little trouble with, because this isn't really cling wrap, I got the wrong type, I use a little bit of tape to keep it in place. So normally for this, I will use duct tape, but I don't have any, so we're going to be using masking tape this time. It should work the same. I just have some reservations of it being strong enough to keep its shape, but I think it'll probably be a little more flexible, so let's give it a shot. Alright, let's wrap them up with the masking tape, making sure to not make it too tight, because it's going to be more difficult to cut them off later, or cut them out of it, and there's a possibility of gouging the doll. So we're just going to make sure it's snug but not suffocating. Have to make sure to protect the face up. Now after wrapping half the doll up in masking tape, go ahead and lay down some lines where I want the seams to go and hopefully look kind of cool. Also remember to mark your pieces. It's going to be a lot more difficult later if you don't. If we did this right, hopefully the pattern's not too tight on him and we can actually get our cutting stuff in there and not gouge him too badly, and hopefully not at all. For right now, we're just going to cut out the inner thigh, the underarm, and along the torso just to get this pattern off him so we can cut out every piece in a little bit. Like a snake molting its skin. On to the next piece, just cutting out all the pieces, and hopefully nothing falls apart or unravels. Okay, so all the pieces are cut out, but I'm having some reservations about the arm pieces. They look a bit uneven. I think it's going to probably make the arms look a bit funny, so I'm going to straighten them out. I'm not sure how well it's going to work, but I'm just going to put a piece of tape on each side and kind of just straighten them up a little bit. We'll know the end of the results. Maybe it looks better, or I just kind of ruined everything. And with all these cut out, it's time to trace these onto some poster board. Oh, let me tell you something. For the next step, I like using butter knives to keep the pattern down. However, some pieces are too small for that, so let's use a little bit of reversible tape to keep everything straight and, again, make it easier to trace. For our next step, we're going to outline all the pieces we have onto the poster board, leaving generous spaces so we can add a seam allowance to the pattern. Whatever you prefer, 1/2 inch or 5/8, as long as there's enough space to allow it. One piece will be special, running across the shoulders without a seam. This one will be cut on a fold, and to remind us, I'll add a special notation. Adding a seam allowance that's even can be tricky, so to help I'm measuring out a piece of poster board, the length we need, and it should make a useful guide to help us. Just a few lines and a hole for the pen to poke through should do it. Just line it up and drag the line, and we have a full pattern. Now we just cut these pieces out. Precious, beautiful gold. And we're off, cutting the pieces according to what color is needed where, which is also noted on the pattern we just made. And again with the butter knives. And once we're done cutting out all the pieces of fabric, it's time to sew. Now we start pinning and sewing. The way I'm sewing this together is pretty much from the legs up, and since I have no real directions on how to put this together, whether we start from the bottom or from the top is both equally valid, this being a freehand pattern. Keeping everything lined up on curves, I always get a bad feeling, but let's trust the pattern we made and hope the legs don't get all wonky. Huh, not bad. And to make sure to tuck in the thread to keep it from unraveling. Okay, as we pin the arm pieces, the modification we made to them is giving me pause. They aren't lining up too well, and I know it will cause a twist. To throw caution to the wind, let's edge up this one more time. Please cross your fingers because this is uncharted territory. Okay, let's just think happy thoughts until we put it all together. There they are. Nothing to do now but continue. Oh, we have a special guest. Hey, ladybug. Okay, come on. Let's get to work. And for the next step, we switch machines. Okay, this is planned to be a lapel, so I have to back it with both an alternate color of black and a piece of interfacing, which we'll install now. All we have to do is face the fancy side of the fabric down, as well as the shiny face of the interfacing down on top of that. I should have used an ironing sheet just in case I scalded the fabric, but it turned out okay. Since we switched machines, let's check to make sure it's not in a mangling mood, mostly because we're using fancy fabrics with spandex. It might behave differently depending on the fabric and situation, so we have to adjust the machine to perform for this specific item. And with the behavior for Papa, let's sew. I'll cut across here so the fabric of the seam allowance has somewhere to neatly tuck after it's turned inside out. Otherwise it would look bulky. And yet again we're switching machines. I'll switch back and forth depending on what works for me. Like, I recently started using the serger and it's great at sewing stretchy fabrics. Before, the clothes kept popping seams, but now I think it should happen way less.
Going to come around this way to the arm.
Yeah, just planning my angle of attack. Remember, slow and steady keeps you from getting stabby. Alright, now that we're... Huh.
Gah! I am the Lizard King!
Now here's the hard bit. We need to install a zipper, but this is a standard one and too long. Compared to the opening I need on the garment, I measure where I need to end it so we can shorten it. From the top of the pull tab, I add an inch of space and cut the teeth in fabric and unravel the thread to free the excess teeth, so we have a nice zipper to work with. It is tedious work, but it's worth it to have a semi-professional look to this project. And to secure the new edge, we are using these little clamps. First locking them with a smaller plier for better placement. Then I'm going to use a larger one for better grip and really clamp them into place. I wrap them with tape so they don't leave indents on the hardware. And finally melting any loose edges with a little fire. It looks like a good fit. Here we're going to base stitch the front, using the zipper as a guide for the length. Okay, it seems to work. The base stitch is just a loose seam which will be handy for installing the zipper. We just need to press the seam open for the zipper to sit in. Just need to place it face down and pin it into place. Next up we have to sew it down. But again, this is fancy fabric and has a non-slide feel to it, which can jam the machine. But to overcome that, we could just use a piece of wax paper to help the fabric pull through easier. We're so close to finishing. Here we need to pin the sides, sew them up, and then start adding the hems to the garment. For the hems, let's use a tube of gold. It should make a nice accent to the already shiny piece. Okay, so the body is pretty much done. All that's left to do now is hem the inner seam and sew away. Okay, let's just turn it inside out. See how it goes. Ah! I like to check the crotch to make sure everything's kind of lined up. So that's a good sign that nothing's going to be wonky on us. Okay, last piece everybody. Next up, we need to attach an Elvis-inspired collar. So with a few measurements and a terrible guessing, we'll make a fake piece and see how it looks. Just seeing it about where we need it and see how it would be. We need to make it a little bit bigger, but the overall shape works. With just a few adjustments, sharpening the angles and adding a seam allowance, this is our final pattern. Just cutting out the fabric pieces for both materials and a piece of interfacing. We go back to the ironing board and apply it. Pinning it into place, we go up one side, across the top, and down the other side, leaving the bottom open to flip it inside out and trimming the points so they lay flatter. Excuse me y'all, I'm getting cold, so I'm gonna get kind of nasally. This is getting really annoying to talk like this. Upon inspection, the top of the piece is bulky, so we need to cut notches into the curve so it also lays flatter without being bulky or weighty. Yeah, much better. Okay, so how are we going to attach this to this? I'm just going to pin the black material, giving a hem I think is appropriate, and keep it out of the way. Then I'm going to sew the gold pieces together, then sew the black front pieces over that, and it should give it a nice finished look. Okay, here it is. What do you think? I feel it's fitting for a New Year project personally, but it worked out so good too. The little details go a long way. Look at these cuffs we made for the sleeves and pant legs. They are wonderful, and for a surprise edition, give it a feeling of high quality work. But you know, it's homemade. All the panels lined up beautifully and hug every curve on this guy. Oh, the sleeves. Please ignore that mess. The sleeves worked out perfectly and don't twist or buckle. Our experiment, well, what we did was, whoa, that special piece across the shoulders looks great. And the collar, it attaches with no hint to the fact that it was done by hand. I apologize if some of this made no sense, was disorganized, or was confusing. But my main goal isn't to make a tutorial, but to share my enthusiasm in creating this for a doll. And I hope you will try your hand at making something yourself. All that said, have a happy new year, thanks for helping, and we hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you. Alexa, we're done shooting. Alexa. Alexa! Alright, sleep it off. We have a whole year to look forward to. See you in the morning.